Hi, this is Christy Smith with the Southwest Wisconsin Small Business Development Center. I'm here today to walk you through the current loan application process for the SBA Small Business Administration Disaster Loan Program. This is being recorded on March 31st. This process has changed several times in the last week or two and is subject to change again. The information I'll share with you today is what we know at this time. If you have further questions, please reach out to your local Small Business Development Center. We'll start here with the SBA.gov, SBA, like Small Business Administration.gov website. This is the easiest place to start. You may have seen other links published. They may change from time to time. So we suggest you start right here on SBA.gov. From here, we'll click on this Coronavirus Small Business Guidance and click Learn More. From here, it loads perhaps a variety of resources. What we're going to focus on today is the Economic Injury Disaster Loans and Loan Advance. There are other applications and other processes here you're welcome to explore separately. So we'll click on the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And then we'll click here to access the application directly. If you are a Small Business Development Center consultant, I'll suggest that you make note of this address and email this directly to clients for now. Again, the process and the website may change, but this saves a few clicks if you just send this link out directly to your clients and local economic development organizations that may wish to share this information. On the disaster loan application here, it is a much streamlined process from what we saw last week. Most of the clients that I've walked through and my own application took about 20 minutes to complete. It took me longer to look up some of the information that it was asking for than to actually answer the questions. So I think you'll find it to be quite simple and straightforward process. The first thing that we do is select the eligible entity here. Most businesses will be choosing either that they're a business with not more than 500 employees. That would be appropriate for your limited liability companies, S-corps, and corporations. If you're a sole proprietor, you would choose the second option down. Please note that sole proprietors may also have employees. So if they're organized as a sole proprietor with or without employees, you choose the second option. Otherwise, choose the first option. You can see if neither one of these apply. There are a few other options here. These are a little bit more complicated, so I'd suggest if you have questions of which one is right for you, to choose this SBA.gov size standards link and look up additional information that might be relevant to your business. You could also reach out to your local Small Business Development Center for assistance. Down here, we need to review and check all the following. You're basically verifying here that you haven't done anything illegal and you're not doing anything illegal now, that none of the owners of this business is delinquent on their child support obligations. They certainly may have child support obligations, just as long as they're not delinquent on those payments. This application and this disaster loan program is not relevant for agricultural enterprises, also known as farms or ranches. So if you are a farm or ranch, you need to stop at this point because I'm afraid this application is not appropriate. For everyone else, go ahead and click that box. Make sure the type of business that you have doesn't involve sexual nature or other things that are restricted here on this. So go ahead and choose that item. That you're not receiving more than 1/3 of your revenue from legal gambling activities. You'll check that. You're not a lobbyist. You're not in the habit of asking members of Congress, either at the state or federal level, to change to change laws or influence laws in any way as a business. And then you're not a local government and you're not a member of Congress. Go ahead and click continue after that. So here on this page, we start by putting in the business legal name. If this is a sole proprietor or a disregarded limited liability company, at this point I'm recommending that you put in the legal name of the person. For disregarded entities, it's who's listed on the tax form. If you are a limited liability company or S corporation or corporation, you would put the business legal name here. So in this case, I'm going to assume that this is Susan Jones, and she's a sole proprietor. So I'll put in here Susan A. Jones, and the trade name then is what she's doing business as. So she might be doing Susan's Styles Hair Designs, right? So that's the name of her business. For the EIN, which stands for Employer Identification Number, something the business would have from the IRS, you would put that in. If it's a sole proprietor, they may not have an EIN, and in which case you put the Social Security number. An important note here is to type only the numbers. Do not put the dashes. You will notice here that it automatically formats it as if it's an EIN. Even though it's a Social Security number, perhaps in this case, don't worry about that. Leave the numbers as they are. Don't worry about the dashes. The organization type here, we'll choose from the drop-down. In this particular example, we're a sole proprietor. In this case, we're not a nonprofit organization, so we would choose no. And this is not a franchise, so we'd also choose no on that. The gross revenues for the 12 months prior. This is something you do need to take a minute and think about. So the gross revenues, of course, are the total dollar amount in sales, all the money that came into the business. But it's not asking for the calendar year. It's asking for the 12 months prior to the January 31st. So the number that needs to go in here is the total amount of sales that the business has received between February 1st, 2019 and January 31st, 2020. In this case, Susan's total revenues were $110,000. Again, you're typing only the numbers. It automatically puts the dollar sign and the comma in it. You do not need to put the cents, just the whole dollar amount. Please note that if you do try to type punctuation, you can get errors. So please only type the numbers into that field. The cost of goods sold is again for that same 12-month period from February 1st through January 31st. The cost of goods sold only includes your direct expenses. If I buy a purse for $50 and I turn around and sell it for $100, my cost of goods sold would be $50. This does not include your rent, utility bills, payroll, or other expenses the business may have. In Susan's case, as a hairstylist, this would include the hair dye and other chemicals involved in that process. So her cost of goods sold may be relatively low, and in this case, we will put $12,500, again, typing only the numbers. These next few questions have been causing some confusion. If you are a for-profit business, you do not necessarily answer these questions. Most of the clients I've helped thus far do not enter this information. The only one that might apply is if Susan, instead of being a hairstylist, was Susan Jones Properties, right, and owned one or more businesses, buildings that she had out for rent. Then she would fill in this, how much rent she was not getting paid by her tenants due to the disaster. But in this case, as a hair salon or for many of our other clients, this is not relevant information. So we simply leave it blank. Do not put 0 in there, leave it blank. Likewise, this field, the nonprofit cost of operation, this is only for nonprofit organizations. If you're a nonprofit organization, please see other training materials, as this training is not intended for you. Likewise, another nonprofit field, information here, if you are a faith-based entity. So that's for nonprofits again. Most of our clients for the Small Business Development Center would not be putting anything in these 4 fields here. They're not relevant. List the secular social services, also not relevant unless this is a faith-based nonprofit entity applying for this loan. This compensation from other sources received as a result of the disaster. We know that there are quite a lot of other loan and a couple of grant programs out there. I would fill in the amount here only if that has already been received. If you or your client has an application pending but has not yet been offered an award letter, I would leave that blank. At such time that they have that money in hand, they can update the SBA with that information at a later time. If you have received compensation from a grant or another loan program, you would describe what program is here. And also I would suggest entering here what that money was to be used for. For most of the people we're talking to this week, we would be leaving all of these fields blank as they simply don't apply to the situation. Down here, we'll enter the business address. So this will be 111 North Main Street. And the city in this case will be Monroe in Wisconsin. Please note the next field is the county, not country. I've had a few people tripped up on that one. So this is in Greene County, Wisconsin. And the zip code there is 53566. Again, you're typing just the numbers there and no punctuation or other information there. The business phone is similar. You want to type in simply the numbers. It automatically formats it for you. And so now if I put in 555-1212, it automatically formats it. Note that when I put in just the numbers and it automatically formats it, it turns from red to green as it finishes. If I were to type in 608-725 and I try to type other things, it won't accept those other characters. It only takes the numbers. If the client has a cell phone, a home phone, or some other place they'd like to be contacted, you can simply put that number in here as well. If they do not have a fax number, leave that blank. It's not a required field. You can tell the required fields by the red asterisk next to the field name. I've had a few people have trouble if they've accidentally typed something in here. It stays that way with this error on it, and it won't let you go forward on the application until you've cleared that out. So make sure that that field is empty before you proceed. The business email here would be the customer's email address or your own email address if you're applying on your own behalf. So in this case, my email is a@sbdc.org, something like that. The date the business is established. This is when the business itself was founded. In many cases, you are the founder of the business, and thus the date the business was established and when your current ownership started is the same. In some cases, though, if you purchased the business from someone else or inherited the business, or perhaps there was a divorce and management changed from the original ownership, that's when these two dates would be different. In this case, Susan started her salon on January 1st of 2010. Again, I'm typing just the numbers with no dashes or slashes or anything else. In her case, she founded the business herself. She didn't buy it from anyone else. So the current ownership since date is exactly the same, 01/01/2010. One other thing to note is you do have to put a 0 before the month number so that it's always formatted in this way. The business activity here, you choose the overall category that best fits the type of business we're talking about. In this particular case, as a hair salon, we're going to scroll down slightly and choose personal services. The detailed business activity here would be hair and nail salon. You'll choose the one that's right for this business. In this case, Susan doesn't have any employees. Please note that it's asking for the number of employees as of January 31st. The SBA, I believe, understands that quite a few small businesses have had to lay off employees in the interim. So this is as of January 31st, how many humans were working there. It's not asking how many were part-time, how many were full-time. It's simply asking for a number of employees. In this case, she has 2 people who help her out, and we enter that information. Please note that right now, my next box is grayed out. You won't be able to move forward in this application if there's some information that it doesn't like. So that was part of the problem with the business fax number there. I've had people have to refresh this page in order to clear it. What I actually have been recommending, though, is that if you type something and you delete it and it gets stuck like this, where the business fax is not valid, type some other number in. It doesn't matter what number, like that, and then delete the whole number. That seems to satisfy it. So that's just a little tip from doing this several times. We'll go ahead and click next on that. A lot of folks have been missing this question at the top of the page. Is your business owned by a business entity? So what it's really asking here is, does this person own the business, or does another business own this business? In this case, Susan, a person, owns this business, so we'll answer no to that question. I've had a lot of people scroll and start working on this and miss that question, and so when they get to the bottom of filling this out, they can't click next. So if you have somebody who says, I filled this whole thing out and I can't click next, ask them to scroll all the way up to the top and look for this question. That's usually been a little bit of a sticking point there. So now we're going to fill in the owner's name. In this case, Susan is the sole owner of this business, but I'll talk about the process if you have more than one owner. So here we put in Susan Jones. Whoops, sorry, I made a mistake there. First name only, Susan there, and the last name is Jones, and this would be her cell phone number. It may be the same as one of the numbers we've already entered in an earlier part of the form. And her title here would be owner. Her ownership percent, we're typing only numbers in here again, and I'll put 100 for her. Her email, again, you may have already entered this. It's just if this information is different, you would change it. Otherwise, enter the same information again. This would be her social security number. And please note that it formats it automatically for you. And her birth date, 1/1980 there. And the place of birth. This doesn't seem to have any formatting. I've simply been typing in a city, state, something like this, Madison, Wisconsin, right? It doesn't seem to have any formatting problems and allows you to type whatever you want in that field. Is she a U.S. citizen here? And then this is her personal address. Again, for some businesses, the business address and the residential street address may be one and the same. Okay, if Susan co-owned this business with someone else, you would up here have not put 100% for the ownership percent. You might have put 50 or 30 or whatever the actual split is, and then click Add Additional Owner to add the additional owner's name and contact information. Please note you do have to have a social security number as well as a residential address for each and every one of the owners. At this point, we don't have another owner, so we'll simply click Next. On this page, it's asking us some questions as to whether or not the business or any of its owners has been convicted of a criminal offense. You can read the rest of this question here and then click yes or no. It's asking here if the applicant or any of the owners of this business are debarred from contracting with the federal government. You would know if you are, quite frankly. So if you don't understand this question, I would go ahead and click no, but most people who would have been debarred or are prohibited from receiving federal grants or loans, they probably had either a loan they've defaulted on in the past or some other situation that they'd be well aware of. So for the most part, you would be clicking no here. And then are you presently under indictment or criminal investigation, or within the last 6 months, have you been convicted as well? So you would answer yes or no to this question. Here, if anyone has assisted you in completing this application, you would put their information here. I'm recommending for the Small Business Development Centers that we go ahead and put our contact information in. I don't know if the SBA will reach out to us, but that gives us the opportunity to act on our clients' behalf and perhaps translate a little bit between our clients and what the SBA might need. It would be important, though, if you do put your information here or have your client put your information here to make sure that you're not charging for the service. This is a free service on behalf of the Small Business Development Center. So in this case, I'll put my own name, Christy Smith, and Wisconsin SBDC, and my phone number here. I've been leaving this address blank. In my case, we don't have a physical office. It doesn't seem to have a problem with me leaving that field blank. And then the client either grants or denies permission for the SBA to reach out to the person listed here regarding this application. This is part of this new process that came out this week. Here the client is requesting an advance of up to $10,000. So we check that box. Then it is asking for the direct banking information for the client in order for that money to be direct deposited into the checking account. So you would suggest that the business owner have a business check handy to get this information. In this case, First National Bank is what their bank is. This would be their account number and the routing number of the bank. Again, you could find that from a check. Some banks have that number on their website, so you could get it there as well. If they don't have access to it that way, I recommend calling the bank directly and asking for the routing number. And that number goes in there as well. Down here below, there's quite a bit of information. You're authorizing the SBA to look into additional information from your insurance company, your bank, financial institution, in order to fully process this loan application. I would really encourage everyone to read this fully and understand what it's asking before clicking I certify that the above is true and correct. Go ahead and click next at that point. And now you're seeing a summary of all the information you've entered. Please note there's an edit button here. So if any of this information is incorrect, this is your chance to go back and change it. When you're all done with the application, everything looks fine. You click I'm not a robot here. Takes a second and then verifies it. And you would click the submit button. Once you click submit, you're brought to a page that shows you a loan application number. It's very important to either print that page or to write down that loan application number. That is your proof and your record with the Small Business Administration of what your loan was. And if you ever need to contact the SBA for additional information or a status, you will need that loan application number. In my own experience, within about 5 or 6 hours, I had received an email from the SBA not mentioning my loan specifically, but just telling me websites that I could go to for information about the process as a whole. So we're not seeing like an automatic thanks for applying email or anything like that at this time. Just know that if you have a loan application number that comes up on the next screen, that you are in the system and to await further communication from the SBA. At this point, I would anticipate they would reach out via email, but because you've entered phone numbers in there, it's possible they might call or mail things as well. There is not a place in this process at this time to check the status of your loan. Simply sit tight and wait for further information. I can only imagine how many applications they've received, and there might be a backlog. I hope this presentation has been helpful. If you need further assistance, please reach out to your local Small Business Development Center. We can be reached at wisconsinsbdc.org. There are people in every state and every county in the country standing by ready to assist you. Good luck.